You gave them your loyalty. You gave them your time. You gave them the very best parts of your soul. And yet, they treated your devotion like a burden and your kindness like a weakness. You aren't just heartbroken. You are witnessing the cold, calculated destruction of a person who never learned how to love. But here is the truth they don't want you to know. Their cruelty isn't a reflection of your worth. It is a desperate, frantic scramble to hide their own internal void. You feel like you're losing your mind because the person who claimed to be your everything has suddenly become a stranger. You are looking for a reason, an apology, or even just a moment of honesty. But you will search for a lifetime and never find it. Today, we are pulling back the curtain on the 6 stages of their mask-slipping behavior, and once you see the pattern, you will finally understand that you weren't the one who failed. You were the one who was exploited. You have given everything to a person who functions through a narcissistic lens. The most jarring and painful development is the systematic rewriting of your shared history. This is not merely a disagreement over the past. It is a calculated act of psychological arson designed to burn down the reality of your relationship so that the narcissist can escape the consequences of their own actions. Because their fragile ego cannot tolerate the weight of guilt or the realization that they have exploited someone who truly cared for them, they must construct a new, inverted narrative to survive their own reflection. In this fabrication, the acts of love, support, and sacrifice you provided are no longer viewed as virtues. Instead, they are repackaged as evidence of your supposed flaws. If you were patient, they now call it enabling. If you were devoted, they now label it as obsessive or suffocating. If you offered compromise, they now characterize it as weakness or lack of backbone. This revisionist history serves a dual purpose. It absolves them of the need to feel remorse, and it provides them with the emotional distance required to justify their eventual discard. By casting you as the villain, they transform their own betrayal into a necessary act of liberation. They speak to friends, family, and even themselves with a practiced conviction that convinces everyone, sometimes even you, that you were the architect of the relationship's failure. They cherry-pick moments of conflict, stripping them of context, and present them as the defining pillars of the bond. You find yourself standing in the wreckage of a life you built together, listening to them describe a relationship that you do not recognize, where your kindness is twisted into a weapon of manipulation. This phenomenon is deeply disorienting because it forces you to fight a war on 2 fronts: the internal grief of losing the person you loved and the external battle to reclaim the truth of your own experiences. They do not just leave you. They attempt to strip you of the narrative of your own life, hoping that if they can successfully villainize you, no one will ever look closely enough to see the hollow, destructive nature of the person who walked away. You are left not only heartbroken but silenced, struggling to reconcile the reality of your past with the dark fiction they have replaced it with. The tactical use of silence, often referred to as the silent treatment or emotional withdrawal, is one of the most potent weapons in the narcissist's arsenal because it weaponizes your natural human need for closure and communication. When they suddenly go cold, it is rarely because they need space to process emotions. Rather, it is a deliberate, high-stakes power play designed to shift the dynamic of the relationship entirely in their favor. By withholding their affection, their presence, and their voice, they strip away the primary reward system you had become accustomed to, leaving you in a state of frantic withdrawal. This silence is not merely an absence of noise. It is a heavy, suffocating presence that forces you to internalize the conflict. You find yourself pacing, replaying past conversations, and obsessively searching for the mistake you made that triggered this abandonment. This is exactly where they want you. The silence acts as a mirror that reflects your own anxieties back at you, compelling you to break your own boundaries just to elicit a response, any response, from them. They watch from the shadows of their indifference, measuring their own power by your desperation. This behavior is intended to make you question your own worth, forcing you to wonder if the connection you shared was ever actually real or if you were merely a placeholder in their life. By refusing to engage, they effectively strip you of your ability to defend yourself or even seek clarity, leaving you trapped in a vacuum of uncertainty. They know that your empathy will drive you to reach out, to apologize for things you did not do, and to try to fix the problem, all of which only serves to feed their ego. It is a psychological trap that keeps you focused entirely on them, making you beg for the scraps of attention they once gave freely. This coldness is calculated to make you feel invisible and insignificant, creating a profound sense of isolation that makes it harder for you to reach out to others for support. They use this silence to exert control without having to say a single word, demonstrating that they hold the power to turn your world on or off at their whim. Ultimately, the silence is a declaration that your feelings, your history, and your humanity are being treated as secondary to their immediate need to dominate the emotional landscape of your shared connection. The public performance of the victim role is a strategic masterstroke designed to secure social survival and preemptively destroy your credibility. When a narcissist senses that the foundation of their relationship is crumbling, or when they have already decided to discard you, they immediately initiate a campaign of character assassination. They recognize that if they can control the narrative in the eyes of their social circle, friends, family, colleagues, or even mutual acquaintances, they effectively insulate themselves from any accountability. They begin to weave a tapestry of half-truths and calculated lies, portraying themselves as the long-suffering, misunderstood partner who has finally reached a breaking point due to your supposed instability, aggression, or unreasonable demands. This is not about truth. It is about impression management. By painting you as the villain, they force you into a position where you are perpetually on the defensive, struggling to prove your own reality to people who have already been poisoned by the narcissist's version of events. If you try to speak out or tell your side of the story, your reaction is cited as further proof of your volatility, creating a cycle where your attempts to defend your character only serve to validate their false narrative. This performative victimhood serves to rally support around them, ensuring they have an audience that validates their ego while simultaneously isolating you. They play the role of the wounded party with such practiced sincerity that even those who know you well may begin to harbor doubts, fueled by the subtle, persistent seeds of suspicion the narcissist has planted. The danger here is that they are not just attacking your reputation, they are isolating you from your support network precisely when you need it most. They are crafting a reality where your pain is dismissed as drama and your truth is disregarded as a smear campaign. By the time you realize what is happening, the public perception has already been molded, leaving you to feel like a stranger in your own social sphere. This performative act is the ultimate protection for their ego, as it allows them to move on to their next target without the baggage of their past behavior, having successfully offloaded the blame for the failed relationship onto you while basking in the sympathy of an unwitting, manipulated audience that believes they are the ones who were wronged. The tendency to immediately replace you is perhaps the most visceral confirmation that you were never viewed as a person with individual value, but rather as a functional resource. In the mind of a narcissist, relationships are not built on shared intimacy or emotional growth, they are built on a utility-based exchange. When they discard you, it signifies that they believe they have drained the available supply from your connection, or that your growing awareness of their tactics has made you a liability. To prevent the unbearable silence of self-reflection and the potential collapse of their carefully curated persona, they move with predatory speed to secure a new source of validation. This is rarely a genuine move toward a new, healthy relationship. Instead, it is an urgent act of self-preservation, a desperate maneuver to ensure that their ego is constantly fed by the gaze and admiration of someone new. By bringing someone else into the fold almost immediately, they perform a calculated invalidation of everything you built together. It serves as a cruel message. You were never unique, you were never essential, and you are easily swapped for the next available person who is willing to believe the mask. This rapid replacement is also a weapon used to incite jealousy and distress, designed to make you look back at your time with them and wonder if they were already preparing the transition while you were still trying to nurture the bond. It is a haunting experience to see your replacement stepping into the life you created, often adopting the same habits, interests, or even pet names that were once special to you. This proves that the narcissist does not value the unique qualities of their partner. They only value the role being played. Seeing them move on so quickly creates a jarring contrast between your own period of deep, painful grief and their apparent indifference, which forces you to question whether they ever felt a fraction of what you felt. They move forward not to find love, but to find a mirror that will continue to reflect the version of themselves they desperately need to believe in. They treat people as disposable commodities, and their ability to jump from one partner to the next without a meaningful transition period reveals a profound, hollow lack of depth that makes it impossible for them to ever truly connect with anyone on a human level. If you have ever felt discarded by someone you poured your entire heart into, hit the like button. It is time to stop apologizing for your empathy and start reclaiming your life. Subscribe to the channel, because the first step in winning is realizing that the game was rigged against you from the start. The projection of their own sins is the mechanism by which the narcissist manages to walk away from a relationship with their ego entirely intact, effectively dumping their own moral failings onto your shoulders. When they engage in deception, manipulation, cruelty, or betrayal, the psychological weight of those actions, if acknowledged, would destroy their fragile self-image. To avoid this, they engage in a process of externalization where they take the darkness within themselves and cast it onto you. They accuse you of being the liar, the manipulator, or the volatile one, even though these are the very traits they are actively exhibiting. This is a devastating tactic because it forces you to spend your emotional energy defending your character against accusations that are fundamentally untrue. While you are busy explaining why you are not the person they claim you are, they are freed from the necessity of ever explaining why they did what they did to you. It is a brilliant, albeit malicious, deflection technique. By putting you on the defensive, they change the subject from their own accountability to your supposed transgressions. You find yourself in an exhausting loop, attempting to clarify your intentions and prove your integrity to someone who has no interest in the truth. They watch as you struggle, using your frustration as evidence of your guilt. If you become angry, they call you abusive. If you ask questions, they call you controlling. If you express your pain, they call you dramatic. This constant barrage of false accusations can cause even the most grounded person to suffer from deep cognitive dissonance. You begin to walk on eggshells, monitoring your own behavior to ensure you are not acting like the person they describe, while they continue to operate with the very toxicity they have projected onto you. This strategy serves to keep you perpetually off balance, ensuring that you are so occupied with cleaning up the image of yourself they have tarnished that you never get the chance to confront them about the actual damage they have caused. Ultimately, this projection is their way of sanitizing their own conscience. They do not have to be the bad person in the story if they can successfully convince you, and everyone else, that you were the one holding the pen that wrote the tragedy. The final discard, often followed by the hoovering attempt, represents the ultimate power dynamic in a toxic cycle, where the narcissist treats your emotional recovery as an optional convenience rather than a boundary. After they have discarded you, having drained your resources and publicly vilified your character, they do not necessarily disappear forever. Instead, they often wait in the periphery, watching to see if you have truly detached or if you are still trapped in the vacuum of the trauma they left behind. The hoovering is not an act of genuine regret or an attempt at reconciliation in any healthy sense. It is a tactical maneuver designed to test if you are still a viable source of supply, a way to see if they can still provoke a reaction, garner attention, or maintain control over your emotional state. They might reach out with a casual text, a feigned crisis, or a hollow apology that seems just enough to reel you back in. They know that your empathy, which they once weaponized against you, is the very thing that makes you susceptible to their re-entry. The goal is to verify that they still hold the keys to your internal world. By reaching out, they force you to break your silence, re-engaging your mind in the cycle of analyzing their motives and hoping for a change that will never come. If you respond, they have successfully confirmed that you are still in range and that their influence over you remains absolute. If you do not respond, they may intensify their efforts or switch tactics to anger, attempting to bait you into a confrontation that would prove they still occupy your headspace. The cruelty lies in the fact that they are essentially shopping for past connections to see which ones can be recycled for momentary ego gratification. They do not care about the devastation their previous departure caused, they only care about whether the door is still unlocked. This stage is designed to make you feel as though the finality you were trying to reach is impossible, keeping you stuck in a state of suspended animation. Understanding this phase is critical because it highlights that the narcissist is not looking for a partner. They are looking for a reliable source of validation that they can turn on or off whenever it suits their changing needs, regardless of the destruction they have left in their wake. The profound state of cognitive dissonance that follows a narcissistic betrayal is arguably the most debilitating aspect of the entire experience because it forces the victim to exist in a fractured reality. When you have invested your entire heart, loyalty, and identity into a person, your brain constructs a mental model of them as a soulmate or a deeply trusted partner. When that person abruptly discards you or reveals a capacity for malice that you never believed them capable of, your mind struggles to merge these two irreconcilable images, the version you loved and the version now destroying you. You find yourself trapped in a painful feedback loop, constantly trying to reconcile the tenderness you once shared with the cold, calculated cruelty you are currently witnessing. This struggle is not a sign of weakness, but rather a testament to the depth of your own capacity for empathy and commitment. Your brain desperately tries to find logic in their behavior, looking for a misunderstanding, a hidden trauma, or a justification for their shift in treatment because accepting the truth, that they were manipulating you all along, feels like a betrayal of your own judgment and history. This inner conflict manifests as a relentless, exhausting mental struggle where you alternate between blaming yourself for failing the relationship and realizing they are a predator. You might catch yourself making excuses for their behavior, thinking that if you just understood them better or communicated differently, the person you once knew would return. This is the physiological impact of being conditioned to prioritize their needs over your own. You are effectively mourning two people at once, the version of them that existed in your mind and the reality of the person who stands before you. This duality creates a paralysis of the spirit, as you are unable to move forward until you can reconcile the fact that the person you thought you knew was largely a performance. The dissonance is a protective mechanism that breaks down under the weight of reality, forcing you to undergo the agonizing process of deconstructing your entire worldview. You are not losing your mind. You are losing a lie. And the agony you feel is the painful transition from living in a distorted, controlled narrative back to the uncomfortable, raw truth of your own independent worth. The final discard is the ultimate manifestation of the narcissist's detachment, serving as the cold, definitive conclusion to a relationship they no longer find useful or profitable. While the earlier phases of the cycle may have involved back and forth manipulation, gaslighting, or intermittent reinforcement, the final discard is characterized by an abrupt, chilling finality. At this stage, the narcissist has determined that the cost of maintaining the relationship, such as the requirement to feign empathy, provide reassurance, or uphold a facade, far outweighs the supply they are receiving from your presence. They may have found a more efficient source of validation, or perhaps they have realized that you are finally beginning to see through their tactics, setting boundaries that threaten their control. When they reach this point, they do not offer closure, nor do they seek a mutual understanding of why things fell apart. Instead, they simply cut the connection as if you were an object they have grown tired of using. This withdrawal is often carried out with a startling lack of sentimentality, demonstrating that the profound intimacy you shared was, in their eyes, merely a temporary arrangement. The discard is an assertion of power, a way to ensure that they are the one deciding when the narrative ends, thereby preventing you from being the one to leave first. It is meant to leave you in a state of shock, scrambling to understand why someone who claimed to value you so deeply could treat you with such total disregard. By walking away without a backward glance, they aim to solidify their narrative that you were the problem all along and that your exclusion was a necessary step for their own well-being. This is the moment when the mask falls off entirely, revealing the emptiness they have been hiding throughout the duration of your bond. It is a harsh, jarring confrontation with the reality that you were not a partner, but a functional component in their life that has now reached its expiration date. You are left to navigate the debris of your life while they move on, unencumbered by guilt or remorse, already searching for the next person to repeat the same exploitative cycle, leaving you to bear the full weight of the aftermath while they remain focused only on their own insatiable need for a new reflection. To walk away from a narcissist is not merely the end of a relationship, it is the beginning of a profound reclamation of your own sanity. Throughout this journey, you have likely felt as though you were losing your grip on reality, constantly questioning your memory, your worth, and your capacity to be loved. But the 6 stages we have explored today, the rewriting of history, the weaponized silence, the smear campaigns, the cold replacements, the projection of sins, and the final calculated discard, are not evidence of your failure. They are the standard operating procedures of a personality incapable of true connection. When you gave everything to a person who only knows how to take, you were not being foolish, you were being human, and that is a trait they will never possess. By understanding these patterns, you strip them of their power. You move from a position of confusion to one of clarity, finally recognizing that the version of them you fell in love with was a carefully constructed mirage. They do not leave because you weren't enough. They leave because you finally became too much for them to control, or because they had already drained what they needed. Now, the path forward requires you to stop searching for an apology that will never come, and to stop seeking closure from the very person who broke you. The closure you need is already within you, found in the realization that your empathy was a gift that was simply placed in the wrong hands. Do not let their narrative define the chapters of your life any longer. You are not the villain in their story. You are the survivor of their game. You have the strength to heal, the power to rebuild, and the capacity to pour your love into people who actually have the depth to receive it. Reclaim your narrative, silence their influence, and start living for yourself again, because the greatest revenge you can ever have is to heal so completely that they become nothing more than a faint, distant lesson in your past.